Hello and welcome to the European Resilience Initiative Center video podcast. Today our guest is Joe Trippi. He is an American political strategist. He's a member of the Democratic Party. He served as a campaign manager for Howard Dean's 2004 presidential bid, and he is a political commentator for several US TV networks. Welcome, Joe, and thank you for your time.
Great to be with you.
My first question is on the President Zelensky of Ukraine recent trip to the US. Many Ukrainians hoped it will change the mood in the United States, but obviously it didn't went as well as it was planned. What was the problem there, if it was any?
Well, the whole funding issue is now caught up in United States politics between the two parties, The Republican Party is essentially using, holding hostage, if you will, funding for Ukraine and Israel in exchange for programs that they want to spending and changing policies on immigration in the United States, which has nothing to do with Ukraine or Israel. Foreign policy or defense in terms of what's happening in Ukraine. And there's no way that any outside force was going to change their game that they're playing right now. I think in the last few days there's been signs that negotiations between the two parties, the president and the leaders of the Democratic Party in Congress are, working with leaders on the Republican side, and there may be some compromise that allows things to move forward, but we won't know until the new year, until later in January probably, how this will go.
So effectively, if I understood you correctly, it's not about Ukraine, it's not even about some sort of competition between Ukraine support and Israel support. It is entirely about the internal political struggle in the United States.
Absolutely. It's stunning because so many Republicans, including the new speaker, have said repeatedly over and over again that they support more funding for Ukraine. As literally most of all the Democrats support funding and support for Ukraine. So there's a majority in both parties to do it, but the Republicans are saying, "But no, we won't do that yet because we want to change the way President Biden and the Democrats are pursuing immigration policy on the southern border, the border with Mexico." It has literally nothing to do with it's a power play. They know how urgently Democrats want to fund Ukraine. They know that's urgent. They know that we desperately want to do it. Okay, well, we will as soon as you do what we want on a matter that has nothing to do with Ukraine's future, the world's future, and that in the regard of the threat of Putin and what that will mean if Ukraine were to fail. Obviously, Putin is not stopping with what he's doing. That would just inflame him to do more. It is a very dangerous game that they are playing, but like I said, hopefully cooler heads will prevail, and with some urgency as the Republicans come back. I mean, that's the other thing. Then they went off on vacation. You said, we'll figure this out later on. While the Ukrainians are fighting for their country, it's many of us in my party just think this is a cowardly, horrible move on behalf of the Republicans. But again, you don't compromise by calling them names. So we will, that won't make them come over. So we hopefully better negotiators than me will be able to convince them to come to the table and approve the funds that are needed.
Well, the people who I talked to in Ukraine, they are pretty skeptical regarding the support from the United States. They had like a lot of hopes recently, and the US has helped a lot for Ukraine with the HIMARS artillery systems, with the javelins in the first weeks of the Russian invasion, and later with artillery, with their Abrams tank lately. But the support, even before the Republicans started to block the legislation, the support started to decrease, and many types of the weapons have not been delivered, or have been delivered with delays, or in not like the volume which the Ukrainians hoped they would get. But looking at the outlook for the presidential elections in the United States, what are the possible outcomes if one candidate will be nominated by one party? What are the chances? What is the consequence for the support of Ukraine?
Well, I mean, I think twofold. One is that it's in a democracy, as you know, in Ukraine, have seen. It's you have to have both parties enough compromise to get things done. I think things may have. There's always been an element of the Republican Party, led by Trump, who supported delaying, slowing down, not giving the funds, or arguing that Putin is actually doing a good job, and this is really Ukraine is part of Russia anyway. I mean, all the propaganda that are repeated by Trump and elements of the Republican Party, that makes it tough sometimes to just, oh yes, here we'll we can't even right now approve any funding right at the moment because of those arguments, because of those elements in the Republican Party. I think moving forward, in terms of your question about presidential race, look, it's going to be a very close race. It's been the last two have been decided by a very few small number of votes in a few states in our country. Essentially, barely. Trump barely won in 2016, but he was elected the president, and in 2020, Joe Biden barely beat him. Both very close races. There's no way that it'll be different this time. It will be a very, very close race at this point. As a Democrat, I think I could make the case for why Biden will get by closely again and win. But there'll be many people, independent analysis, who will tell you that it's just as likely that Donald Trump is reelected and back in the White House. There's no way to predict that. Like I said, I can tell you why I think the economic conditions in the country will have improved a year from now. That'll make Biden stronger. I mean, there's different things. I also think in the end that the American people will reject the contrast between Biden standing with Ukraine and Trump standing with Putin. And I think you even in the primaries now, you have Nikki Haley, who's looks like the top challenger to Trump, in the primary, Republican primary. She is campaigning saying that we must stand with Ukraine. And Trump again is doubling down on his support for what Putin is doing. So I think in the end that division will actually work for Biden, and the American people will not, even though Trump is getting more and more of them to agree with him about Putin and what Putin's doing. I think Biden will win. If in terms of how that will impact Ukraine, I think if Trump wins, it's pretty clear to a lot of a lot of Democrats that that perfect call to Zelensky, trying to basically threatening no support unless you do what I say, that's likely to be much worse and much more likely to benefit Putin than Ukraine and Zelensky if Trump is back in the White House. But hopefully, from my perspective, Biden will win. As disappointing, I understand want more weapons faster, and I would love to get them, help make that happen. But as slow as, or whatever disappointment in Biden, ability to move against this Republican Party that wants to hold back for Trump. It's like the stall campaign to help Putin accomplish what he wants to do. There's that faction in the Republican Party, and they will keep stalling. And if they can stall long enough and Trump can become president, then I think that's very bad news for Ukraine.
Before we go deeper into the question, like what weapons, how fast, and who is for and who is against, don't forget to like this channel, to subscribe, to share it, and if you have any ideas, leave your comments under this video. We're talking to Joe Trippi, who is an American political strategist, a member of the Democratic Party, and a political commentator for several US TV networks. What did stopped President Joe Biden, from increasing the delivery of the weapons? What was the political reason for that? He could have delivered more without waiting for the stalemate just before the presidential election. Was it some political miscalculation, or are there reasons?
Well, I mean, I think two things. One is that you can only do what's appropriated. In other words, if they set an amount that the $42 billion of things can go to Ukraine, once you hit that number, you can't jump in front of it without another vote for money. That's why we're in the situation again now. That's one. The second thing is that if you remember early on, we were able to basically send Ukraine what they wanted, funds, whatever, so they could buy what they needed. I mean, in terms of the way it, and then the Republicans started to scream, but Ukraine's corrupt. Why are we sending so much money that's going in their pockets of corrupt leaders, and not when we should be spending it here at home on immigration, on building a wall or whatever. So that created a whole lot of Americans saying, yes, why are you spending money for corrupt, it's not even going to fight the war, it's going into pockets of corrupt people, instead of doing things here at home to make life better for the American people. Well, the President of the United States, just like President Zelensky, has President Zelensky's got a lot of, you have one big severe problem. You have many problems, but the one everybody is unified in the country, in Ukraine, because you're fighting that war. In the United States, people hear those arguments, and it makes it tougher to get approval, to get the votes to send the money. I think the other thing is that there was disagreement, whether wrong or right, I don't know. I'm not a military analyst, but I think a lot of our military believed that one, they thought that some weapon systems would take longer to train, like the fighter jets and things like that. We could give them to you, but that they wouldn't be used right, because you have to have months of training. You could say, well, shoot, the training should have started earlier. Then I'm just saying, but I think some of these things were just sort of how our two militaries looked at each other in terms of how adept you could adapt. I think many people were surprised at how adaptive Ukraine military and fighters were. I mean, and how innovative. I mean, I don't think we foresaw that maybe as fast as we should have. I'm not, which is a credit to Ukraine.
But now we have the situation which we have with the stalemate in the legislatory. And will it continue until the presidential elections, until November next year, and maybe even after, until the inauguration? of the new president. What is the perspective in this case?
I don't think so. I think that there really is a commitment to enough votes in both parties to follow Biden's request for the billions that are on the table now for Ukraine. And I think that there will be some agreement. It will happen. I mean, I think Biden has signaled and said that he will compromise on immigration, that he will give the Republicans not everything they want, but a lot of what they want in exchange for their support. So now I think it's it's an argument about well, wait, how much on immigration will we get? What will you give us? And that negotiation will happen, is happening probably as you and I speak, and as your listeners and viewers are hearing this. But once that agreement happens, I think that full. There's no. What I'm saying is, it's not like, well, no, we want to give less than you want for this immigration reform. No, they're saying we'll give you what you are requesting, but we need you to compromise on immigration. The president says, I will give up on that. Not everything, but let's. So the negotiation is about immigration, not about the Ukraine funding. So I'm hopeful, as I think you should be, that they'll compromise on the immigration, probably much to the anger of Democrats. I'm talking Democrats voters. They'll be angry that the president gave so much advantage to or change and reforms that they believe are backward and shouldn't be part of our immigration policies in the United States. They'll be angry about what the president gives up, but I think he's willing to. He has stated clearly that he's willing to do that, to incur that anger if it will compromise and get funding for Ukraine, which again goes back to your question: why so slow? How come we didn't get this? I understand all those things, and I agree with you about why maybe we should have moved this faster or that fast. But I would say that Biden has done everything he possibly could, really, a miracle in terms of what he's been able to get to Ukraine and do for Ukraine, in my view, holding the alliance together, trying to get the most out of it in support, with total obstruction, opposition, slow walking by elements in the more of Trump elements, not all Republicans, but more the Trump side of the Republican Party, which controls a large number of people. You have to remember that 141 of them voted to not even certify that Joe Biden is the president of the United States. Those are the people he has to convince for these votes. They still to this day, many of them say he's not the legitimate president, that Trump is, and that Trump's right about Putin. I mean, it's just obviously a time when our own democracy in the United States is at risk, I think, from within. And I think that risk is there for Ukraine as well if Trump comes back to power.
That is exactly the question I wanted to ask you later as the next one. We don't have, until now, and now we're talking on the 22nd of December 2023, we don't have yet a candidate which has been nominated by the Republican Party, and we don't know who will be this candidate. What are the chances here for competitors who will lead the Republicans into this fight for the White House?
Well, the one that's emerging recently is Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador during Trump. She has emerged as the second. People thought it would be Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, would be the the main challenger, and he has been for quite a while. But it now looks like Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador, has started to move ahead of him in the polls. As a Democratic analyst and somebody who's covered 10 presidential races, either as in the campaign or as an analyst for a network on U.S. television, I think that Nikki Haley has an excellent chance of surprising people in the first contest, Iowa, not winning but coming in second. And I think she has an excellent chance. Our own polls in the United States are showing her in second place already in New Hampshire, which will be the second contest. And in that state, she's within 12 or 15 points of Trump. Trump ran around 42% of the vote, and she's at 29. With everybody else, still other candidates being at 10%. I think a lot of those votes will move to her as we get closer to that contest in New Hampshire. I think she'll beat Trump in New Hampshire. The problem then is the way the Republican Party conducts the rest of the primaries. The first place finisher gets all the votes for the party nomination. And it's hard for me to see after those first couple of contests even for Trump, if he only beats her by a few points, he gets all the votes at the convention to make him the nominee. So I suspect she'll weaken him. And one of her core arguments, of course, is that as UN ambassador, she understands foreign policy and she understands why America must stand and defend Ukraine and support them and not stand with Putin. Of course, Trump is doubling down on his and support for his good friend Putin, who he loves and adores. Whatever that fight, even if it only lasts for a month, I think helps to divide the Republican Party into those two camps. Even if it's a smaller camp that's for pro-Ukraine with her, that group could be a group that votes with Biden in the general election, in the final. And so I think I think some good things could happen that make the Trump argument weaker and get some Republicans to start thinking, wait, where's Ronald Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall, which is what most Republicans remember of a different kind of Republican who stood against the kind of bully that Putin is on behalf of freedom. And I think she might ignite some of that in the party and get more people in the Republican Party to think hard about whether they really want to vote for Trump or not. So if I would say I'd be very, as you said, we're here on the 22nd, I think it is, of December. I think by the 15th of January will be Iowa. I would look very closely there. If I was somebody who's interested in what's happening on this sort of Ukraine, Russia, Putin the thing, how well does Nikki Haley do? Because she's the one that's carrying that fight.
And she's the person who, as the polls demonstrate, has better chance to beat Joe Biden during the presidential election. So that is what I, from my European perspective, don't understand. What is the reason for the Republicans to nominate Donald Trump, who has worse chances to defeat Joe Biden, compared to nomination of Nikki Haley, who can be a Republican president almost guaranteed?
Well, one, I would differ with you. The Trump has such a hold over his group in the Republican Party. I mean, such iron control of them that when you say to me, Nikki Haley, she's ahead of Biden by 17 points in some polls, but Trump is ahead by 3 or 4, in that same poll. Aren't you worried that if she's the nomination, she defeats Biden? No, I'm not worried at all about that. The reason I'm not worried at all about that is because there is no chance that Donald Trump will go to the Republican convention and urge all his MAGA supporters, for the good of the country and the good of the party, please join me, my MAGA friends, in supporting Nikki Haley for president. He's going to she stole the election. She's part of the deep state. Zelensky probably owns her. It'll be, he will tell all of his supporters to stay home, and Biden will crush her because no one will vote. So it's a crazy. You got to understand the time that we're in here because of the strength Trump has. Trump is going to. That's why I said I think she might shake him up and shake the party up a little bit. But I think in the end, he's still, that iron hold he has on his party will still mean he gets the nomination. But even if he doesn't, and she wins, there's no hope for her because he's not going to give her a big kiss and wish her well. He's going to say she stole it, accuse. It'll be. In fact, I actually am wondering if she does defeat him in New Hampshire, does his reaction, the fire of his reaction, I mean, the names that he will call her, does that start to offend like Republican women enough? I mean, is there some level of his reaction that will make that divide in the party even stronger? Because I think that the more that divide occurs, and this is not as a Democrat, I'm not saying this as a partisan, I'm talking more in terms of the more that divide happens, I think the better it is for democracy and a pro-democracy candidate, whether it's be somebody like Nikki Haley or Biden, will win the presidency, and that's a good thing in this fight against Putin and the autocrats around the world. Anything that weakens Trump, for me, is something that I'm hoping we start to see in January. Around the 15th is Iowa, and then a few weeks later in New Hampshire, I think it'll be in February, that we'll see whether I'm right about Nikki Haley having an impact, having an ability to open up the primary and have a fight the rest of the way. Trump will probably win that fight, but you never know. Things happen in politics, so we'll see.
Indeed, Donald Trump is not a person who is famous for the quality of accepting defeat and welcoming the winner. So there will be an interesting fight between him and other Republican candidates, even if he loses some states as a nominee for the presidential race. But in this situation of the U.S. Not apathy, but some weakened position, what should the European Union do? How can the EU compensate this lack of the U.S. presence in the European security issues?
Well, I think again, it's the same. Literally, it's the same question, because if Trump becomes the president, then you have, he's already been very vocal about wanting to throw NATO away because it's a waste of time for him or whatever. Biden has been, I think, shown considerable strength, again, given the opposition from Trump and the Republicans, to try to bolster the alliance and gain support for Ukraine. And again, leaving Ukraine aside, I mean, the alliance, it's growing because of the fight against Putin. Just yesterday or today, I think I saw that Japan is now replenishing supplies of missiles to get them to the U.S. or to Ukraine, either replenishing U.S. supplies or Ukrainian supplies. So that's a lot of that is Biden foreign policy. It's Biden diplomacy, working to expand beyond just the Europeans' support for Ukraine. But that would get tremendously weakened, obviously, if Trump becomes the. That's why I'm saying I don't think that would be the case with Nikki Haley. I think Nikki Haley would be someone who would try to make the NATO alliance work, would try to expand it, would try to expand Japan and others to join a more cohesive ability of support for Europe and Ukraine against Putin aggression. No doubt about that in my mind. So that's why I'm even if I was wrong about maybe Trump would somehow support her, accept his defeat. It would not, as much as I would rather have Joe Biden win, that would be, an outcome that would be at least we have our democracy, we have someone who understands why you need to have the world pull together in alliances against the bullies and Putin and those out there. I think Nikki Haley would be like that. I think the threat here is that if Trump wins, it's not just what I'm saying is it's not just the European alliance. It's not just Ukraine. It's U.S. The U.S. is a democracy itself, and as I think a beacon of strength and an effective diplomatic and military leadership is gone, and our democracy. And if our democracy is that badly damaged, then it affects everybody, because then the European alliance, there's no, like I said, you'll have a president who wants to throw that into the wind, and I can't imagine how policy, American policy, Trump's policy towards Putin and Ukraine, how that could be any good for the Ukrainian people. I'm not. Again, not saying that as a partisan. I can't, given all his statements, all the things he's done, all the things he's said in approving of Putin, and all of Putin's propaganda and talking points that's in support of Trump. I just don't see how that could play out in any way, shape, or form that would help benefit Europe, Ukraine, or freedom. I think we'd all be in a lot of trouble. That's why I'm hoping that we do see some elements of the Republican Party start to embrace Nikki Haley as we get into these first few contests.
Is there any strategy for Ukraine or for the European Union to enhance communication channels with certain politicians in both parties, in the Democratic Party and in the Republican Party, to be sure that after the elections, whoever wins, the support from the US will not dramatically decrease?
I think the only thing people can do right now is try to talk to as many Republicans as they can in the House and the Senate to try to gain support, as much support as possible. That's where the problem is. It's not, for the most part, it's not on the, with Democrats or even the independents in the Senate. It's the Republicans, and the only thing where I do think there are numbers of Republicans enough who support Ukraine and would vote to fund it. They fear Trump, and when Trump says don't do that, so far they don't do it. And I think so. Any gains you make now in terms of talking to them and I'll be there. If Trump wins, they will not be there. They will not. It's just not. They're at no point. Everybody has said, well, wait, what if this happened? It's now to the point where you've all heard this. If he shot somebody on the street in New York, Republicans would say he must have had a good reason. They won't. They are not. They have shown no capacity. Some have. I'm not trying to. Liz Cheney. There's been some members, but they're no longer in Congress. They've been purged from the party. So no, and that's what's sort of fascinating to me, is that you've seen this yourselves. I mean, you've seen how Putin purges people out of the party if they or purges any challengers or any opposition, and Trump has done that within the Republican Party. That's why there are not that many who you can actually convince, because he's purged all those people. The fewer and fewer of them. There's still some left, but no. And what I'm saying is there are still enough left that with Democrats voting together, they will get the right. I mean, they will, I think, do all the right things in terms of making sure the funding's there, those kinds of things, humanitarian aid, all those things. But once the king, Trump is now back in the president's office, and threatening, you won't get this if you don't do what I say, they will all fold immediately, and so that's the danger here, is that we are, he has said he wants to be dictator for a day, and then he won't be a dictator anymore. I don't know, maybe you've seen this, I haven't. Maybe in your side of the world you've seen this, I haven't. I've never seen anybody who is a dictator just for one day. Once they become a dictator, it's hard. So he will definitely be a dictator in his party, and that will maybe expand to other things once he's president, if he's back in the White House.
Well, that is very interesting, and from some perspective, a dramatic perspective and insight. We have talked to Joe Trippi, who is an American political strategist. He is a member of the Democratic Party. He served as a campaign manager of Howard Dean's 2004 presidential bid, and he is active as a political commentator for several U.S. television networks. Thank you, Joe, for having joined us today.
Great to be with you.
And don't forget,
such a gloomy outlook for U.S. politics, but hopefully it will be good. It'll work out.
Well, we are not unfamiliar in Europe with the gloomy perspectives. We live in such perspectives since many decades, if not centuries, so it's nothing new here. Don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe to this video channel, and wait for the new stunning interviews.